Okay, it is Friday, February 28th. We've got yesterday's slate. Big game from Steph Curry last night. We've got some NFL topics. We'll talk a little bit about the Yankees. This is the Early Game Podcast. Listen to the show in the mornings, on your commute, whenever and wherever, so you can be a part of today's sports conversations. Let's go. Okay, let's start out with yesterday's slate. The game we're going to talk about today is the Warriors Magic game from last night. And the conversation we'll have will surround, in my mind, one of the greatest players in NBA history. I would make the argument that he is a top 5 player all time, and that is Steph Curry. Last night, Steph scored 56 points. He had 12 threes. And remember, Steph Curry is 37 years old. He has not lost a beat with his shot, with his three-point shot. The Warriors went on to win the game 121-115. And just as a side point, hear about the Warriors. What we're experiencing here are a Warriors team which is trying to ride away into the sunset. A team consisting of Steve Kerr as their coach, Draymond Green, and Steph Curry. Klay Thompson's gone, obviously. But this team is trying to put together at least one more championship run. And honestly, more now that they added Jimmy Butler. They're trying to put together more than one championship run. They signed him to an extension. And so the goal here is for the end part of Steph Curry's career to win at least one more championship. Now, Golden State is currently the 7th seed in the West. Remember, the play-in teams are 7, 8, 9, 10. So they just need to move up one spot. They're a half a game behind the Clippers for 6th in the West. And so they just have to move up one spot in the standings to get away from the play-in. I'm pretty confident that they'll do that. They've won 5 straight. They've been excellent with Jimmy Butler. They're 7-3 in the last 10. And so again, we've spoken many times. Teams that can make a run here in the West, the Warriors are one of those teams. The Lakers are another one of those teams, obviously adding Luka. They're another one of those teams that can make a big run here down the stretch of the NBA season. But back to Steph. Because in order for the Warriors to make a run that they're hoping to make, it is predicated on Steph Curry being the superstar he is, being the MVP candidate he is, year in, year out. He's going to need to have similar performances to last night. Will he have to put up 56 every night? No. But he's going to have to put up similar performances to last night. Steph Curry is one of the most interesting players in NBA history, for sure. And the reason why is because when we talk about greats, all-time greats, Steph does not normally make his way into that conversation. People talk about him in the context of being one of the greatest shooters ever, being a winner. They talk about his impact on community. They talk about how great of a character he has. And to that point, to the character point, if there is one player in the NBA which I would tell my kids to model themselves after and go about their day in the way and be their role model, it would be Steph Curry. Unselfish. Doesn't care about the spotlight. Seems like an overall good dude. But when we're talking about greatest talents of all time, and me being 27 years old, I've watched LeBron, Kobe, and Steph. And those are, I would say, the three top players I've ever watched. Giannis makes his way into that conversation. Luka Doncic is going to make his way into that conversation. Dirk Nowitzki is in that conversation. I'm sure I'm missing players. But I think that it's pretty clear to me that the 3 players I've ever watched live are LeBron, Steph Curry, and Kobe Bryant. When it comes to the Michael Jordan against LeBron debate, my answer is always, I never got to experience Michael Jordan. I've only heard about him and watched highlights. Watching highlights and looking at statistics and numbers is different than the feeling you get when you watch a player play live. It's different than the feeling you get when you turn on a game at night within the context of what is happening in that season, in that moment. Looking at statistics is different than experiencing a playoff run. And so I've always said, I don't know who the better player is. I just don't. It seemed to me from watching highlights like Michael was the better player. But I just don't know. LeBron is obviously absurdly good. Absurd. And it's hard it's hard to witness somebody who people consider to be the best of all time. It's hard to do that. And the reason why is because I just don't have what to compare him to. I've never known any different than watching LeBron James play. That being said, I remember a world without Steph Curry. I remember what it felt like to not have Steph Curry. And I remember very clearly how the game of basketball changed once Steph Curry entered the NBA. We used to value shorter distance shots much more than we do now. And obviously, everybody knows. The game of basketball changed when Steph Curry rose to relevance. And the reason why was because he was such a good shooter. And for sure, easy to say, the best shooter of all time. But how he revolutionized how basketball is played, I would say, is unlike anything LeBron, Kobe, or Michael Jordan was ever able to do. Nobody looked at LeBron James and said, I want to change the way I play because of how good he is at one specific thing. LeBron is phenomenal overall as a basketball player. Phenomenal. I'll always be astonished at how he is able to play each position on the floor, all 5 spots on the floor, he's able to play at an elite level, including playing the center position. That's something that Steph Curry cannot do. But one thing that Steph has done that LeBron hasn't is morphed the way the NBA is played. He has put an emphasis on three-point shooting like nobody ever has in NBA history. And so in that context, and thinking about it from my lifetime of watching players and watching how that evolved over the last 15 years, 10 years, that's why I put Steph in my top 5. And again, the reason why I don't like ranking is because I never got to experience Wilt Chamberlain. I never got to experience Magic Johnson. I never got to experience Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. I never got to experience these guys live. I know Jordan and LeBron are 1 and 2, whatever order you want to put them. In my mind, Kobe deserves a spot in the top 5. And a lot of that is because of how his the Mamba mentality, a lot of that is because of that, how hard he worked, how successful he was after that hard work, and just how good he was. Steph Curry, though, certainly deserves to be in that top 5 conversation. And I think that a lot of what we're going to, a lot of how we're going to evaluate Steph once we're done is how does he finish off his career with this team, with Kerr as their coach, with Draymond, and now with Jimmy Butler for a few more years. What will they be able to do with this ensemble? Him and LeBron are tied at 4 championships apiece. And so you have to think, with LeBron already being 40, can he pull out one more now with Luka? And can Steph finish off his career with some championships to add to his resume? And that's going to be the big question moving forward for when we decide who the greatest of all time is in the NBA. Okay, let's move on. We have a few NFL stories here, and we'll also get to some baseball. One thing that we have not spoken about all week is the fact that the Jaguars hired their new GM. I gave them so much garbage for how they went about their GM and head coach search. I think that it is sports malpractice to hire your head coach before you hire your general manager. Because any leader of a team, any general manager, needs to, any leader of any organization, a CEO, should not be picking who the company president is. That's just a bad management structure. It should never, ever work like that. You should never be picking the person making the decision, the person making your decisions on your fate and the players of your roster. And so this annoys me to no end when teams do this. To no end. And so this is what the Jaguars did. And after that, what I found interesting was they waited a while after hiring Liam Cohen as their head coach. And they waited a while for after all the general managers were hired, after the whole cycle was over, to evaluate which candidates were still available. And the interesting part about all this is that they ended up going with 34-year-old James Gladstone. He had spent 9 seasons with the Rams, meaning he started his career with the Rams at 25 and is now being hired as the Jaguars general manager at 34 years of age. 34. He is 7 years older than I am. And he is the general manager he is one of 32 jobs. A general manager in the National Football League. Go look up this press conference, this introductory press conference. It looks like they went to a high school. They tapped a random kid on the shoulder and said, "Hey, come be our general manager." The optic is absurd. I get it that it doesn't matter, but you need to look the part a little bit. How are other general managers going to respect this guy? He's 34. Some of these guys are 50 and into even older than that. I don't get how much of a kid wonder this guy James Gladstone is. This Jaguars situation has doomsday situation written all over it. I think that this Jaguars team can be a horrible, horrible, horrible situation for the next couple of years. It could be a mess. Now look, the pieces are there, so it's hard to just go full commitment that this is going to be a failure. They have Trevor Lawrence. We can't pretend like Trevor Lawrence is not a talented quarterback. We can't pretend like Liam Cohen is not a talented head coach, or a talented coach for that matter. We don't know how he'll be as a head coach, but he's certainly a talented offensive. He was certainly a talented offensive coordinator. And I'm not as much garbage as I'm going to give James Gladstone. He could be good. Obviously, if he's hired at 34, he's got to have some sort of talent. But this just seems like, with everybody's gut has to be, from what I've seen, that this is going to be a failure. Okay, let's move on. So, something we've spoken about on this show are the teams in the top 10 of the NFL draft who are looking for a quarterback. I named 6 teams. It was either earlier this week or late last week. The Jets, the Giants, the Titans, the Browns, the Jaguars, not the Jaguars, and the Saints. But of all those teams that I listed, the one team where I'm thinking to myself, oh, and the Raiders are on that list. I missed the Raiders. The one team that I wasn't thinking of, that I thought probably maybe had the least likely chance of drafting quarterback, were the Saints. I thought maybe Kellen Moore would want to run it back with Derek Carr. Maybe he has what it takes to figure out how to get something out of Derek Carr, who we know is talented, but has never been able to fully put it together. And so I find this interesting that the Saints are now linked heavily to both Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders walked into the combine yesterday with 3 hats. One of them was a Saints hat. And people were speculating that this meant that there is mutual interest between Shedeur and the Saints for the Saints to draft him. And then, later on that day, there were reports that the Saints are going to be doing major due diligence on Cam Ward. And so this kind of comes as a surprise. It really comes as a surprise to me. I thought that the safe thing for the Saints to do would be just to run it back with Derek Carr, let Kellen Moore work with him and try to figure it out and make him better. Kellen Moore must see something in both these quarterbacks, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Kellen Moore has been a great coordinator for years with several teams, and that's a good indicator that he should be able to make it work with different types of situations. So let's see. Maybe what the Saints try to do is flip Derek Carr, get assets for him, and then draft one of these 2 guys. Or draft somebody else, frankly. It's just interesting to me that we've now heard about the Titans possibly trading away one, the Browns being interested in drafting one of these 2 guys, and the Raiders interested in drafting one of these 2 guys. Obviously, the Giants and Jets are looming. And now the Saints, who everybody kind of discounted for the last couple days, are right back in this mix for quarterbacks and drafting quarterback. It will be an interesting next couple days at the Combine, trying to see who we can get a pulse on for whether they're going to draft a quarterback. Okay. And one last NFL topic today. So Matthew Stafford's going to meet with the Rams about his future. There's been a lot of discussion in the last couple weeks about whether Matthew Stafford is going to be traded from the Rams. I saw something that in 3 seasons with the Rams, he's made $145 million. It is crazy how much these NFL quarterbacks make. It is just absurd to me. But that's the name of the game here. And so he's looking for another, I believe, 2 years and around $100 million to finish off his career. And it doesn't seem like that's what the Rams want to do. And so for the Rams, it seems like a pretty clear vision forward. Trade Matthew Stafford, possibly sign Aaron Rodgers, who there's mutual interest there. Get assets back, blah, 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 blah. I think for Matthew Stafford, the objective is quite clear. Make your way to the Raiders. The Raiders are a better fit for Matthew Stafford, mentally and physically. He has never not played in a dome or in SoFi as his home stadium, and he's 1-8 in snow games in his career. He does not fare well in cold weather games. It seems like the Raiders and going to Las Vegas would not be a long commute or long distance from where he currently resides in SoCal. Whereas the Giants would be moving cross country, not being with Tom Brady, who he clearly has some sort of relationship with. And so with all this, and with the Raiders and the Giants emerging as the 2 most likely destinations for Matthew Stafford, I think that the one that makes the most sense are the Las Vegas Raiders. However, I think that the team that will probably end up paying the most are the New York Giants. And the reason for that is because Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are desperate to win. They're desperate to keep their jobs. And with desperation, possibly comes overpay. And I think that ultimately, wherever Matthew Stafford ends up, and I'm sure that the Rams will give him some sort of benefit of choosing between whatever, about giving his input about where he would go if they end up deciding to trade him. But I truly believe that the Giants will ultimately offer much more, not much, but they will offer more than what the Raiders would be willing to do. I still think that there is some sort of desperation when it comes to the Raiders. I think Tom Brady probably wants to win soon, and I think Pete Carroll knows that his years are numbered. Even though he has just started his tenure with the Raiders, he knows that he does not have unlimited time to have success with the Raiders. And he is going to need to have a good quarterback at the helm early on. Not something he had in the late years of his tenure with the Seahawks. But he will need a good quality quarterback in order to have early success. Okay, let's move on to the final topic of the day. We're going to talk baseball, and once again, we're going to talk New York baseball. Is it me, or has this been a relatively quiet first week of spring training games? No major injuries. Nothing crazy. For sure nothing that's happened in game. The Mets had those 2 pitching injuries, but that really had nothing to do with the spring training game starting. It's been a relatively quiet last couple of weeks. And a lot of the reason why baseball's been quiet is because every single top free agent this year signed before spring training started, before a game started, which has not been the case the last couple of years. And let me be honest, it's really nice. It's nice to not have that weight of figuring out where these guys are going to go on my shoulders. I don't like the stress of players not signing. I like to know where they're going to be. One thing, though, the 2 major injury stories, though, so far this spring training, we've spoken about both of them at length, are the Mets with their pitching and the Yankees with their DH. And so one thing we've spoken about is that Giancarlo Stanton doesn't seem to be anywhere close to playing for the Yankees and potentially being out a significant amount of time to start the season. He has injuries on both of his elbows, and so now the Yankees are trying to figure out what they're going to do at DH. One option that has been brought up is Dom Smith. He's had a hot spring so far. He's already hit 2 home runs. And so Yankee fans are getting excited about the prospect of Dom Smith possibly breaking out with the Yankees and being a diamond in the rough. A good pickup for Brian Cashman. I just want to pump the brakes a little bit on Dom Smith. First of all, guys have good spring trainings and good springs and doesn't necessarily translate to the regular season. Dom Smith had a phenomenal 2020 season. That's what he's most known for. In the shortened season with the Mets, he had a two WAR. That was by far his best season. In 5 years of the 7 he's been in Major League Baseball. Of the 8 he's been in Major League Baseball. 6 years of the 8 he's been in Major League Baseball. He has had a negative WAR. So in 2017, negative 0.9, 2018, negative 0.5, 2021, negative 0.7, 2022, negative 0.4, 2024, he was actually a 0 WAR, and 2024, he was a negative 0.1. Can he turn it around? Absolutely. Players turn it around all the time. But Yankee fans need to pump the brakes here. Now, another option they might have at DH is Jason Dominguez, who has not looked good in left field. Now, some Yankee people are saying that he's just better positioned for center field. I don't buy that. It could be. I think if you're bad at left field, you're probably bad at center field too. He has not looked good fielding in left field. And when you have a team that the strength is the pitching, you need your defense to be spectacular. And so maybe what the Yankees decide to do is move Jason Dominguez over to DH until Stanton comes back. Okay, that's a show. Make sure you're following on X, follow on Spotify, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Have a wonderful day. This is the Early Game Podcast, and have an amazing weekend.